Today I wondered, what is the history about Alaska? I really wanted to know some facts about it. So I invited Dr. Bader. He's an expert all about the history of Alaska. I invited him and he kindly accepted my invitation. Hello, sir. You won't come in?
Grüezi. Do you have some Schläppli?
Yeah, I will give you a slap. Wait a minute. Here you have some.
Thank you.
Don't worry, take your time.
Thank you.
So, I wonder, what can you tell us about Alaskan history?
Hey, Cookie.
She's also interested in Alaskan history, right?
It all started about 3,000 years ago when the first settlers settled in North America. Well, obviously it is continued, and over the time there were another 3 waves of migration. But one thing to notice is, during all this time, the people from Alaska never went down southwards.
Mm-hmm.
So the genetic information of the people living in South America, so the Mayas and so on, they do not share any similarities with the Alaska natives.
So, over this time, about 3,000 years, how many tribes, or were there different tribes in any direction there?
Yeah, let me just take my cheat sheet. Like, we nowadays try to organize these Alaska natives based on their linguistic and cultural heritage. There's for one the Aleuts, the northern Eskimos or Inuktitut, then we have the southern Eskimos, the Ute, and the interior Indians, and the southeast coastal Indians. Now, if you were a native of Alaska, you probably wouldn't consider yourself one of those. This is just a grouping made up by modern historians to group these people together.
So they don't see themselves like different races with their tribes like
No,
we do.
they are different clans.
Clans.
So all over Alaska, they have their villages and they trade with other villages. They have political connections. However, they do not have the same categorization as we have with those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different groups.
Okay. So tell me about the Inuits themselves. So how did they live there? What specialties do they have?
Especially for the people during this time, you have to imagine this is a cold area to live in, and the winter is long. So one of the most important trading goods for those different clans were furs. There was a huge business with curing, various kinds of animal furs. And this will also be important when the first settlers come to Alaska.
So there are more people coming to this ice cold tundra in nowhere.
Yeah, exactly. At some point, the Russians, they will cross the Pacific Ocean and, pay a visit to the Alaskan natives. And, yeah.
So a nice visit from Mother Russia.
Yeah, you could say so. Is your back hurting from too many history lessons? Well, then you're lucky. Try our free educational history videos and get rid of the pain. Only now available on TikTok. Please visit History with Booze.
So tell me, what did the Russians do?
Well, at the beginning, during the time was 1648 when the Russians came for the first time, there were about 80,000 indigenous people living in Alaska at that time. And, the Russians, they arrived by ship and they started to trade with the natives. As I mentioned before, they had a huge, the fur trade was booming in Alaska. And so the Russians wanted to take part in this. However, with time, the Russians, they started to be more offensive, and instead of hunting the marine life themselves, they forced the Aleuts to do the hunting, to do the skinning and so on, produce the fur, and the Russians would just use them as a cheap labor force, essentially. Сука, прет. As the word spread in Russia, various companies came to Alaska to exploit the natives there, and import more and more of the fur in their motherland.
So the Russians turned bad, like with no reason they enslaved the people there.
Well, the thing is, the Empress of Russia at that time, she wanted the natives of Alaska to be treated fairly. However, with the growing competition between the companies, they actually, started to ignore the Empress's wishes over time, and the situation turned dire.
And did that have any influence with the life in Alaska, like the ecosystem or?
Yeah, excellent question. And indeed, there was an effect on the local habitat for the marine life, and the population started to decline. So, in order to counteract the declining production of the furs, the natives had to take greater risks and, go into more deep and dangerous waters in order to procure new products.
Would you guys like something to drink?
No, Mom, we are here doing a task.
Well, actually, I'd like to get a glass of water.
Here you go.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Thanks, Mom. Love you. And with those new risks, how did the Inuits manage to survive and live?
The people that were being exploited the most were the Aleut, one of the subgroups living in Alaska at that time. And over time, there was the Russian-American company that took hold of the monopoly on the fur trade, and they started to increasingly demand more, production from the natives. And obviously it was impossible because, first of all, the marine life was missing, and second of all, hundreds of the natives died just trying to kill some of the remaining animals, and the people just got more and more unhappy. And at some point it ended with the natives revolting. Obviously the Russians didn't like it, and they massacred again hundreds of natives, destroyed their weapons, their hunting tools, and left them with nothing to survive. And yeah, another important fact caused by the colonization, about 80% of the natives, of the Aleuts, died because of some diseases brought over from Europe by the Russians. So thousands upon thousands of people died.
So many. Damn. And I have still a question. I don't understand. Alaska is America, so why did it all started with Russia?
Yeah, this is actually quite a funny story. During the time of the colonization, all the Russians extracted, now it sounds hard, but it's true in the end, were furs. And at some point, it just wasn't profitable anymore for the Russians. So, the Americans actually wanted to purchase Alaska. So the Russians wanted to sell Alaska, the Americans wanted to purchase it. And that's why Tsar Alexander II from Russia was around the mid-19th century, made contact with the Americans and invited some commissioners to the capital in Alaska. After some planning and so on, they decided on 7.2 million US dollars, which is nowadays about 126 million US dollars. So it really is nothing. I mean, we're talking about a land area larger than Switzerland by far for just measly 126 million. And the pun of the story, the Russians, they completely got owned by this purchase.
What exactly do you mean?
A few years later, it was discovered that Alaska has many gold mines. And, even later, it was discovered that Alaska has huge reservoirs of oil.
Huh.
So, yeah.
So poor Russia.
Yeah, I wouldn't really say they're poor. I mean, still, they completely went to a new land, in this case Alaska. They destroyed the lives of many thousands inhabitants, and afterwards now they cry and say, we sold Alaska for way too little. Yeah, but it didn't belong to you from the very beginning.
That is true. All this information, it was very interesting. So, now, do we get a drink or get drunk?
Yeah, let's get a beer.
Yeah!